The BEF, as you know, have returned to Britain. Here are a few scenes on their arrival at a French port, ready to cross the Channel once more. They all appeared to be in very good shape, tough and cheery, muskets and all. Now they've taken the measure of their enemy, they know that on anything like even terms, they can beat him. Weighed down by their full equipment, they find it quite a job to get aboard some of the transports towering up above the quay. The troops came home in many different kinds of ship, big and small, flying the red ensign and the white. In the harbour at that time was one powerful unit of the French Navy. Anyway, the BEF has come back, and whatever the disasters that have led to their return, we at home are mighty glad to have them here. Not exactly part of the expeditionary force, but affected by its withdrawal and the French Armistice, women drivers of the Anglo-French Ambulance Association reached London after a long journey south. Miss Leslie Murray tells their story.
There's nothing very much I can tell you, because nothing frightfully exciting has happened to us. We were up at Compiègne when the war started, and then we were pushed gradually south by the Germans. Every time we could, we evacuated the hospitals on the way down, till eventually we got so far south we couldn't go any further south. Then we were taken off by the Navy just north of Bordeaux. We've taken a couple of days to come home, and we're frightfully glad to be home. All we want now is a hot bath and some night's rest without being disturbed and told to move on somewhere else.
The Royal Air Force, too, has left France with its equipment. Here are men of the RAF on their way to the coast to embark for Britain. And if anyone were to suggest that the boys were downhearted about it, these pictures would rapidly correct such a wrong impression. First of Britain's fighting men to take up their positions on French soil at the beginning of the war, the RAF were the last to leave it when France capitulated. But as for their morale, well, that's unbreakable. British reconnaissance planes were circling overhead, guarding against a Nazi attack on the columns making for the coast. When the ground staff and all the material had been successfully withdrawn, the last of the planes hopped across to join the concentration in Britain. At the port of embarkation, any signs of depression of the way the war was then going? Not one. Nothing can shake these lads who have proved themselves the finest war pilots and aerial navigators and gunners in the world. Greatly outnumbered during the blitzkriegs in Belgium and France, they covered themselves with immortal glory. Solitary British fighters would never hesitate to attack as many as 50 enemy planes. Odds of less than 3 to 1 they came to regard as almost unsporting. That's true, and the skill they've displayed has equaled their daring. And all their courage is still needed, for with Britain carrying on a lone struggle against the forces of aggression and cruel oppression, aerial supremacy becomes more and more the vital need of the British Empire. The RAF has returned to Britain. Its task now to protect not only the lifelines of the British Empire, but more than ever the very security of the British Isles themselves. On their efforts, in cooperation with the Royal Navy, depends the continued existence of the last stronghold of freedom in Europe. Britain has the manpower for the immense air force that she's now building up. Her sons in Britain and in the dominions beyond the seas possess the very qualities that will produce victory. But Britain must have the machines. Despite the efforts of British factories now truly geared to the speed of modern war, we rely on planes by the thousand brought from across the Atlantic. Given the machines, the Royal Air Force will not only defend Britain, it will win the mastery of the air in Europe. And that means victory for the cause of world freedom. Upon the Royal Navy has now fallen a greater responsibility than ever, as great as in the days of Nelson and Trafalgar, and the present situation now corresponds closely with that period. Britain's fleets are still virtually intact in spite of Nazi efforts to destroy it by submarine, by mine, and from the air. Supported by the big battleships with their 16-inch guns, Britain's huge number of fighting ships holds the seas against Nazi invasion by water. They hold the seas against the import of war material to Germany, or the German-occupied country. They hold the seas against further aggression and tyranny. In this work, the Fleet Air Arm has played and will continue to play a most important role, not only in reconnaissance, but also in attack. On this occasion, the squadron captured yet another Nazi merchant ship, while the naval warplanes were bombing a distant target, probably a U-boat. Coming down in the wake of the warship, the seaplane is seen to have used up all her bombs. She's had a successful flight. Another blow has been struck by the Royal Navy. And still they come, the sons of Britain from overseas rallying around the mother country in her hour of trial. The arrival of this contingent was not only a well-guarded secret, but also a surprise. For in Britain, it had been assumed that all Australians and New Zealanders were destined to go to the Suez Canal and the Eastern Mediterranean. So the British people is doubly delighted to see them, each one of them. Cheerful, bronzed, lion-hearted fellows who are among the best fighting men in the world. The two dominions were associated once in the Australian and New Zealand Army Corps, the ANZAC, and as such achieved fame at Gallipoli. Later they parted and won their separate reputations in France and Flanders. This time their first battlefield is likely to be the shores of old England itself. They march to camp under the appraising eye of generals and officers of high rank. England, Scotland and Wales will be covered with tent colonies this summer, and the New Zealanders go cheerfully under canvas somewhere in England. Camp life is second nature to these hardy sons of the Empire, as their healthy open-air appetites bear witness. And are they smart on parade? Every man-jack of these troops is not only a grand fighter, but a well-drilled soldier. They bear comparison with His Majesty's Guards or the Royal Marines. And now meet New Zealand's representative in England, a grand old gentleman, once a policeman, Mr. Jordan, who addresses them as an old soldier.
Well, gentlemen, whether it is in the cities, the towns or villages in Britain, whether it is in bigger jobs that you may be called upon to do, you'll play the game and not only maintain that reputation that others have established in this Great Britain, but that you will improve on it. All right, all the best.
More Canadian help, too, is continually reaching Britain. By no means the least important is a contingent of Canadian nurses. Their spirit of service in the cause of empire is as gallant as that of the men from the Dominion, and the old country bids them welcome. Many Canadian airmen arrive at the same time. These are some of the men who will finally achieve supremacy in the air. And that, as we have said already, is one of the ways that lead to victory. No one denies that Britain faces the gravest situation in all her long history. The defense of the country for the time being takes precedence over every other consideration. And a citizen army of men who work by day and keep watch by night has sprung up in 4 weeks. These are the local defense volunteers. Their job is to stand guard over vital points, to spot the descent of parachutists, and in the event of invasion, to supplement the 1.25 million men who form the British Army in Britain today. As you see, they are armed and are brushing up their acquaintance with the rifle on the many ranges of the country. All sorts of organizations have formed these local defense volunteers, popularly named parashots. On the roof of a famous London hotel, the porters, valets and waiters are drilling with a skill that bespeaks the old soldier. The railways have their own squads. The parachutist, the enemy saboteur who is dropped behind the lines to create confusion and havoc, is the chief menace to Britain's island security. And against him, these parashots will act as scouts and skirmishers for the regular forces. In docks and naval establishments expected to be a special target for the Nazi attack, the Navy is undertaking to train its own anti-parachutists. Every sailor in any case is taught musketry, and its special application to the new warfare is rehearsed aboard a warship. Moreover, there are always the Royal Marines. Watch them jump to it as the officer gives the signal of command. General Ironside, now the Commander-in-Chief of Home Forces, drops in to see how the Navy is running its anti-parachute defenses. Be sure he goes away well impressed. The flags on this British pavilion float bravely in the breeze. We know that we are the next objective of the megalomaniac who is seeking world dominion. We are confident that we can withstand him. Over the wreckage of his aeroplanes, by the battered remnants of his ships, yes, by the frustrated efforts of his troops on the road to Dunkirk, we swear that he shall not smash our freedom. In the words of Mr. Churchill, we will so bear ourselves that if the British Commonwealth and Empire lasts for 1,000 years, men will say, this was their finest hour.